Let me have another sip. It's like wine. Sometimes the first sip isn't very nice and the second sip way better. Did you see us on the news? Donna and I went to the Easter show and we were looking at the knitting with a critical eye and filming everything at the same time that Jasmine from the SBS was interviewing people and doing a piece on knitting in the modern world. And she interviewed Donna and I on SBS News and we got on the TV. Oh, that was very exciting. A case of being in the right time at the right place. Right place at the right time. A case of being in the right time at the... A case of being in the right place at the right time. I think that the piece was originally going to be framed as knitting, you know, not just for grandmas, but when she ran that up the flagpole on the big Facebook group in Australia, she was certainly told in no uncertain terms that people, knitters, don't like being told that your hobby is a grandma hobby. Sick to death of hearing that. I mean, I know I'm sick to death of hearing that. I'm also actually a little bit sick of the theory that says knitting's having a comeback, because they've been saying that for 30 years as well. So either knitting never went away or the comeback has been going on for 30 years. And can you call it a comeback if it's been a 30-year movement? I don't know. On my recent trip, I visited 8 international yarn stores and I bought some yarn and other things from those 8 stores. I didn't get something in every one of those 8 places, but I did get something in quite a few of them, and I want to share with you what I bought and what I intend to make with it. 2 of those stores were in London and the other 6 were in Copenhagen. Let me start with Beautiful Knitters. That was the first yarn store that we went to. Beautiful Knitters is located in a very gorgeous part of London. It's just south of Victoria Station in a suburb called Pimlico. It's quite close to the river, and Pimlico sort of borders on that really leafy, gentrified kind of area around Belgravia, a little bit sort of, it's got a really, there's a lot of well-heeled and well-dressed individuals living in those gorgeous whitewashed mansions around Belgravia and Pimlico. It's quite close to the Tate Britain, and the closest train station, or the closest underground station, is Pimlico, and also it's not a long walk from Victoria Station. It's located in one of those beautiful white sort of mansion homes, although of course it's a shop, but it just occupies one floor of one of those beautiful buildings. I've got some footage which I'll put in. It's a tiny shop, really, really small, but perfectly formed. Everything has been really beautifully laid out, and there are some amazing yarns there. The staff were very, very friendly, and when I was there it was actually quite busy, and there were some amazing, really, really beautiful samples of knitting in the store. Actually, that's one thing I took home with me from the yarn stores that I went to, the 8 of them, is that every single one of them had a rack of knitted samples that were showcasing the yarns that they had in stock, and all of those samples were really, really impressive. There were some absolutely gorgeous ones. As a matter of fact, I was very heavily influenced by quite a few samples that I saw on my trip in general. We met Karen from Beautiful Knitters while we were there, and we did mention to her that we were on our way to H&H trade show that weekend, assuming that she was also going, and she was a very, very forthcoming, open, friendly, very, very, really nice person. Beautiful Knitters is packed with exciting yarns. I was particularly enamoured by the wall of Zakami hand-dyed yarn that's immediately to the left when you enter the store. I'd never seen Zakami hand-dyed yarn before, and it was unbelievable. I've heard about it on some of the YouTube channels, but having never seen it. I think it's a Scottish hand-dyed brand, and I think it's actually a little bit hard to get. The colours of the Zakami yarns were amazing. Australia has some really, really high quality, fantastic hand dyers too, so I didn't buy any Zakami yarn. Also, I think it was like $85 a skein or something like that, but those Zakami hand-dyed yarns were really a wonder to behold. I was also excited to see a really large range of Fonty yarn, and when we were talking to Karen, she was really extolling the virtues of Fonty. She was saying, "Oh, I don't knit with anything except Fonty. It is the most beautiful yarn," and I tend to agree. The Fonty yarns were absolutely gorgeous. I received a little tiny box of Fonty samples when we went to H&H, the trade show, a couple of days later, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but the range of yarns that Fonty have are really, really interesting, and the colours are gorgeous. And at Beautiful Knitters there's a really amazing selection of Fonty yarns, and I was really excited to see those in person. What did I buy in Beautiful Knitters? Well, all purchases come with a tote bag, which I really appreciated. I thought that was actually very generous. And I mentioned before, actually, didn't I, that I bought 2 balls of Isager silk mohair in the colour 0, and 2 balls of Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the colour Haze, and I held them together to I've already made something with them. I held them together to make my, is it the Flora scarf, which again, heavily influenced by another YouTuber, Andolini Knits. This took just 1 ball of each, or a little bit less than 1 ball of each, so I've got 1 ball left over of each, so I think I'll make another one or something very similar. I also bought these really super cute little tulip stitch stoppers, tulip needle stoppers. Aren't they cute? And a Beautiful Knitters little tape measure, which, to be honest, was thrown in as a gift with purchase. Beautiful Knitters was a great shop. I was really excited to go there. That was great fun on our first morning, heading off to Beautiful Knitters. I could have probably bought a lot more yarn there, but I was just warming myself up for what was to come over the next few days. We went to Beautiful Knitters on the Tuesday morning, and we were going to go to Loop in the afternoon, but Loop is not open on a Tuesday. So on Wednesday morning, we headed off to Islington on the tube to Loop London. Loop London is actually located in a little cobblestone alleyway set back off a traffic street, and it's a very charming little area of London. It's in the north. If Beautiful Knitters is in a really well-to-do area, Islington is a little bit more arty and a little bit more salty and a bit more, down to earth. And the morning we went, there was actually a really tiny little vintage market going on in that laneway, which is just adding to the charm and intrigue of the little laneway shop. So we went into Loop London. Loop London is also a very, very small store, but it's on 2 levels. There's some very steep stairs that go up to the top level in Loop London. And the yarns that Loop have are, again, very, very heavily, very, very beautifully curated, and there's a huge selection of interesting yarns. And we spent at least an hour in Loop, sort of sitting on the couch upstairs with our Ravelry cues out, really deep diving into everything we had around us and exploring all the possibilities of the wonderful things that we could knit with all those amazing yarns that they have at Loop London. Their selection of yarns is also really, really fantastic. Lots of Isager, lots of Rerum Natura, there's Ito, many, many brands. Trying to remember what's downstairs. I'll show the video and then you can just see for yourself what's downstairs. So I think downstairs is mostly the 4-ply and the sock yarn, and then when you go upstairs it's more the sport weight and the sweater quantities and the thicker yarns. Not 100% sure if that's true or not, but it's jam-packed with gorgeous yarns. It's a beautiful shop. It's actually the 3rd time I've been to Loop London. It's been there for a really long time. The first time I went when my daughter was only, I don't know what, she was 10, now she's 25, so they have been in business in London for a really long time. I was particularly inspired at Loop London by the Ito Sensai silk mohair yarn, and I bought from Loop London a kit of yarn that's actually for a scarf, but I'm not going to use it for a scarf. Let me show you the curated little colour pack and the little box that it came in. I bought these 5 colours of the Ito Sensai, which is a silk mohair blend, one of the softest ones I've ever felt. And These are going to be for some kind of colour work yoke sweater. I'm looking at the Kintra by Rebecca Clow because, as I've mentioned before on the channel a few times, I really love the Mohair sample that she had one of her testers do, and I bought these as sort of a jumping off point for the colours in a Kintra yoke. I did actually buy another pop of colour to go with these at another store that I'll show you later, but this is really the starting point. I've got a few other silk mohair leftovers because you don't need very much in any individual colour that will probably go with this, but I just thought that these 5 colours that had been, you know, carefully curated by Loop London were a better pick than I would pick for myself if I sat down and tried to choose them, because I'm not great at choosing colour combinations. To match with that, I bought this Rerum Natura Ulysse in the colour Quartz. It's a beautiful, you know, sort of ambiguous beige with pink leaning. It's quite a pale colour. It's like a cream, but it's got a pinky beige leaning. Quartz is probably a good name for it. I bought 6 of those, although I seem to have only been able to find 5. So maybe I only bought 5 of these. But this is for the body of that sweater. I am hoping that I bought enough. I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to be playing yarn chicken and that I might need one more. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I bought the Rerum Natura in quartz and this Ito Sensei in this curated little box of 5 in order to make some kind of colour work yoked sweater. Probably the Kintra by Rebecca Clow. And we were only in London for 2 days. So after that, we headed to Cologne for the H&H trade show. There was no yarn shopping at the trade show because, being a trade show, it's not open to the public per se, and it's not, the idea of it, it's not a retail market, it's actually a wholesale market. So the idea is where the yarn suppliers gather together and the yarn retailers visit the suppliers, look at the trends, look at the new yarns, look at the new patterns, and, you know, forge the relationships that they've got for the businesses moving forward. But what they do have at H&H is there's often little goodie bags and samples being given away from these yarn companies. And one of the vendors was Redesigned Bags, who you'd have to be living under a rock in the knitting community not to know of Redesigned Bags. They are a Danish company, I believe. I better check because I said that Pasquale was Italian and Pasquale is German. Thank you to all my commenters who pointed that out. It was my bad. Redesigned are a Danish company and they make project bags. Redesigned are huge right now. The guy from Redesign was actually saying that they are so busy they can barely keep up with demand. And that was a theme that we found in quite a few of the yarn companies and quite a few of the suppliers at H&H, indicating that maybe knitting is having a resurgence and that people's appetite for bespoke and, you know, higher end gear for their crafting is actually on the rise. We were really, really lucky enough to be gifted one of the Redesigned promo project bags. You can see that the Redesigned logo there is really big, and that's an indicator that this bag was actually a gift given as a goodie bag from the show. These actually weren't that easy to come by. They weren't being given out willy-nilly, and you know, you had to do a little bit of networking in order to get yourself one of these bags. I'd like to probably thank the Pasquale team for being instrumental in me obtaining one of these. But anyway, this is a fantastic bag. It's a really beautiful colour. It's a really sort of inky kind of burgundy brown, and I love it. And in fact, I didn't have a tote bag with me on the holiday, so I lugged this around once I got this on my 4th or 5th day on the trip. I took this around as my general bag most other places I went. So I was lucky enough to receive one of these Redesigned bags. We received quite a few samples of things here and there. I got this little tote bag, you know, this little wrist bag from Amano Yarns, along with a ball of their cotton alpaca fingering weight. It's really lovely yarn. Gepard Yarn gifted me with a little scarf kit and a little pattern with 2 skeins of their cashmere kumala, which is a brushed cashmere yarn in this incredible duck egg blue colour. I really can't wait to use that, although at this rate we'll be 6 feet under prior to getting to most of this yarn. And a little square Addy novel lace needle that's actually one of their square needles, but it's also ridged on the edges, which is supposed to be better for hand health. I knit a lot, and I really have to be careful about the state of my hands because they do get actually quite inflamed. But I received that from Gepard Yarn. Pasquale gifted me with a skein of Merino Baby and a skein of their Monada, which is their Mohair Silk Merino Yak brushed yarn in chocolate brown. That'll make a nice little mini scarf too. And I won't go through all of it, but there was quite a few little complimentary skeins and samples of yarn given to us while we were wandering through the vendors on the day, including this really cute little wrist bag from Amano Yarns. The trade show finished on Sunday night, and very early Monday morning, like 5 a.m, we got on a train and went to Copenhagen from Cologne on the train. And I'd recommend getting the train between cities in Europe over a plane any time. Firstly, the cost is comparable, but and you could probably get a better deal. I always feel like someone else is always getting a better deal than me. I don't know. But anyway, the price is comparable, I think. But once you factor in travel to the airport, time taken to get through security, time taken to get through passport control, time taken sitting at the gate, I just think it's far more relaxing to go to the train station and get on the train in Europe. And passport control may or may not come up the aisles of the train while you're there, and you can show them your passport. Security is, from the trains we got from Germany to Denmark, there was no security to go through. There was no passport control. You just got on the train in one country and got off the train in another. It was, really, really easy and very relaxing, and actually way more comfortable on the train, really, than it is on those charter flights, particularly if you have to go anywhere on Ryanair. I feel like my Ryanair days are behind me, I hope, because that airline, it's awful. So we got to Copenhagen in the afternoon, where we checked into the hotel, had a nice relaxing night, and then on the next day we went to 2 yarn stores. The first one we went to was Woolstock. Woolstock is a combination of a cafe and a yarn store, something that's actually very common in Copenhagen. The shop's really pretty. It's laid out in sort of an L shape, and then there's a little spiral staircase or a little steep staircase where there's a sort of a mezzanine level where there's little tables and chairs where you can sit and have coffee. We met a viewer there, lovely Bitten, who treated me to a Danish special which was very much like the rumble. So I had a rum ball and a cup of tea, and we had a really good look at their yarns. To be honest, the selection of yarns in Woolstock was probably not my favourite, but I really did like the vibe in there. It's very airy and bright, and it's very dog-friendly, which I was very excited about. There were lots of cute... Oh, speaking of dogs, here's my puppy. She's feeling very guilty because she did a poo in the middle of Bunnings. Didn't you? And I didn't have any bags. And I think that's why she did it. I think she knew. Woolstock was a very dog-friendly store, which made me very happy because, as you know, I love me some puppies. But I'd been there for quite some time and I didn't want to leave the store empty-handed, so I just bought a skein of Lana Grossa Alpaca and a skein of Lana Grossa Sooty, which is a self-striping sock yarn. The alpaca sock is just an oatmeal colour, and this is a rusty coloured gold and pink, little tiny bit of bronze through it, self-striping sock yarn. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those. I think they'll just get added to my stash to marinate. I might potentially use these in a giveaway actually on the channel fairly soon, because I have reached 10,000 subscribers and I didn't really do anything. And also I had a birthday. I think this channel turned 2 and I didn't really do anything for either of those milestones. So I might end up giving that away in a giveaway. I'm not sure. Watch this space. On the same day that we went to Woolstock, we also ducked across downtown to another yarn store called Sommerfuglen, which is Danish for butterfly. And that store had a completely different vibe. It's not a cafe, that store. It's just a yarn store. It's quite a bit bigger than Woolstock. Again, it's sort of L-shaped, and it's set out sort of in zones. So you walk in the front door and the counter's on the right, and then on the left-hand side is a wall of kind of sock yarn. There was a lot of hedgehog fibres hand-dyed there. There was also more of the Zakami hand-dyed yarn, which, as I mentioned, has to be seen to be believed. That yarn just literally blew me away in its magnificence. A lot of hedgehog fibres dyed yarn. But my trip to Sommerfuglen in Copenhagen did not end without me purchasing some yarn. One of the things I wanted to buy while I was over there, which was on my list, was I wanted to get a sweater quantity of Filcolana Arwetta and a matching sweater quantity of their Tilia silk mohair, because that's a combination of yarn that I've seen used for many, many different types of garment. It, you know, like a one strand of fingering and one strand of silk mohair held together lends itself to lots and lots of different patterns, and there's lots of patterns out there that would go with that. And so I was really happy to see in Summerfuglen that they had a huge range of the Filcolana Arwetta, a whole wall of it. And then I was sort of left with some sort of decision paralysis because there were so many colours and I completely forgot what colours I liked or what colours I thought looked good on me. And the only colour that I could actually reliably say was my favourite was pink. And so in Summerfuglen I bought some pink yarn. I bought 6 skeins of the Filcolana Arwetta in this, I think they've probably just got a number. Yeah, they have. I bought 6 skeins of Filcolana Arwetta in this really lovely soft pink colour. It's a very, very pale pink. It's, like I'd say it would be almost like a ballerina tutu pink. Very, very pale. It's got a number, and the number is, it doesn't have a name, the number is 318. And then to match that, I couldn't find a colour of Tilia that I thought matched it well enough. So I bought a matching quantity of the Isager silk mohair in this pink that's slightly, actually no, they match perfectly. It's not slightly anything. So I have a sweater's quantity of these yarns. And while I was there also, they had the Ito silk mohair, and I bought from them 1 skein of the Ito silk mohair in this, I think it's aubergine, the colour. Oh, there you go, it's Bordeaux. In this Bordeaux that I'm going to match with the little box of Ito mohair that I got at Loop London to go in with the yoke of that sweater. And there was another yarn that I bought from there that was actually, I just copied from Erica. She bought this in Loop in London, and I looked at it and I was interested in it, but sort of it was playing on my mind for the next couple of days, and when I saw it again in Summerfuglen, I actually picked some up for myself. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it, but I must say I'm quite fascinated by it. It's one of those Rico carry-along threads. You know, Rico's got that Make It tweed that you carry along and it tweedifies your signal coloured yarn. Well, this one's called Rico Make It Bloomchen, which I'm assuming is, supposed to be like a little flower. But what it is these little tiny micro sequins in fluoro coral. And I think that could be quite fun in, some kind of knitting project. So I picked up, sorry. Are you right? I'm not speaking to you. You did a poo in Bunnings. I know, I picked up a little cone of that. It's got 175 metres or something. 375 metres, so quite a lot to maybe pair in a scarf or something like that. I'm really not sure what to do with it. If anyone's got any ideas of what would be cute using that, let me know, because I was fascinated with it and I've got it, and so, but I'm still not 100% sure what I'm going to do with it. I'll just pop it up there. And I also bought the obligatory tote bag at Summerfuglen. Again, talking about samples. In Summerfuglen, they've got, in the centre of the store, they've got this big bookcase. It's probably one of those Billy bookcases from IKEA. And it's absolutely full of folded sweaters, and that's how they display their store samples. And they're all there, you know, available for you to pull out and try on. There's a little table next to it where people were using that to sort of put the yarn that they were after on the table and sort of curate it and work it out and, you know, collate it and put it all together. But this entire bookcase full of some of the most amazing sweaters. The way that the samples are organised in these yarn stores, it's definitely conducive to, you know, wandering into the shop and saying, oh, what will I make today? And wandering over to the samples, going through them and saying, oh, this is beautiful, I'm going to have one of these, and then going and getting the yarn for it. The samples in Summerfuglen were also absolutely beautiful. The other thing that was in Summerfuglen that I noticed actually made an appearance in quite a few of the stores were these embroidery kits. Now, I know that embroidery on knitting is actually becoming more and more popular at the moment, but in Summerfuglen, they also had a dedicated section of stock that was dedicated to cross-stitch projects and other embroidery projects. They had little kits of like drawstring bags, and one of them had a little dash hound on it. I should have bought that probably. But I was looking at a big wall hanging, a big sort of, you know, artwork. And it was very simple. It was just little squares of different coloured cross-stitch. And I think there are 100 squares in it. And I was standing looking at it on the wall, and I said to Erica, oh, that would be beautiful on the wall in my knitting room, you know, in here. And I said, but, oh, it's so expensive, because it was expensive. And much to my delight, when we left that store and we were heading around the corner for a coffee or an aperitif, Erica whipped it out of her bag and said, look what fell into my bag for you. And she actually gave it to me. So, you know, that was beautiful of her. It's a 100-day project. I would show you the progress I've made on it, except that it's embarrassing. And that was the end of my first day of yarn shopping in Copenhagen. And then the following day, we went to the Frederiksberg area. There are quite a few yarn stores in that area, where we visited another 4 yarn stores in one day. The first one we went to was called TanteGron, which is Auntie Green, which is in walking distance from Knitting for Olive, and also a really fantastic yarn store. So TanteGron was our next stop. That store is, again, small, L-shaped, really, again, amazing array of knitted samples that they've got on display. Lots and lots of mini scarves. When you walk in, there's a table, and on that table is a gorgeous little curated bunch of knickknacks and little stuffed toys with knitted dresses and some great project bags and bits and pieces. And then above that is a rack, and on that rack is an entire selection of mini scarves. You know, maybe 20 different patterns of mini scarves. All of them look fantastic. And at about this stage, I was actually immersing myself in the joy of the Sophie scarf being absolutely everywhere you looked. So that was very apt and very sort of, you know, trendy and fashionable. There was also a Paul Clay sweater on display in the centre of the store that really caught my eye, and I was really tempted to buy an entire kit for the Paul Clay sweater, which they had on display. But because I'd already bought the yoke kit more or less for the Kintra, I thought I'm not going to, you know, double up on my project sort of styles. So I didn't. There was a brand of yarn that they had in TanteGron that is called Yelholt. And it was not on my radar. It was on Erica's radar. She'd been looking for it in a few of the stores that we'd already been to. And she was absolutely delighted to see that at TanteGron they had a really, really big selection of that yarn, and often in sweater quantities. And the more I looked at it, the more I really loved it. Yelholt is a Danish brand that have been in production since 1878. They make a very rustic yarns, often in natural colours, and I picked up enough for a sweater in this really lovely brown that's a purple leaning brown. As a contrasting colour, it's for a colour work sweater of some kind. I bought this sort of oatmeal-y colour that's really quite heathered with a bit of darker black. There's quite a bit of guard hair on it. And as I said, it's a very rustic yarn, but it's also quite glossy and quite soft as well as being rustic. And then as a pop of colour, I bought this really amazing fuchsia. I bought those three colours together in the hope of making one of those really graphic floral yoked pullovers, except I might not make it as a pullover. I might make it as a project bag or maybe even a cushion, because I've mentioned before, I really like looking at those big floral motifs. You know, the big tulips, you know, they're kind of Dutch looking to me, but I really like looking at those designs, but I'm not sure that I would actually wear one. I don't know that it would actually suit my style. And then plus, when you're wearing it, you can't really see it, can you? So yeah, I'm thinking about maybe making a bag or a cushion with that, but that's the yarn that I bought for that. The other thing that they had at TanteGron, which I was really excited to see, was the little selection of the original petite knit bag notions. You know, the what's the word? The haberdashery needed for the petite knit bags. And I definitely want to make one of those petite knit bags. So I bought their official bag liner, which is made of this sort of cotton. And I've got to be honest, it's pretty homemade. But it's just a little sort of bucket bag base with the round base and, you know, straight sides. I also bought the petite knit zip, which is a YKK zip, you know, like a high quality sewing zipper. But I think that the good thing is it's actually difficult to find the zippers that have got the little tabs. So I bought the petite knit zip, 28 centimetre one. I hope that matches that. I'm not actually 100% sure. A little petite knit label, and also the bag charm, so that when I make my petite knit bag, it'll be all kitted out with the official petite knit merch that went with it. Erica bought quite a bit more yarn in TanteGron, so much so that they actually gifted us our tote bags, and then at the end they actually threw in a gift with purchase. And I was given this. This isn't so much based on my purchases, which, you know, was substantial but not groundbreaking. I mean, Erica did something to the GDP of Denmark that day, I have to say. Anyway, they gave us this really gorgeous, see, there she is, there's Auntie Green, and it's a little needle sizer and gauge measure. And I think that is just so cute. So I'm going to put that up there, I think, or somewhere up there as a memento of my visit to TanteGron on that day. TanteGron. I realise that I have said TanteGron in a different way every time I've said it in this video. And that's because I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm doing my best. Knitting for Olive is, again, a small store. It's actually sort of split level. Concrete floor, very, very sparsely decorated. It's more of a showroom than actually a yarn store. Although it is a yarn store. You can buy everything that's on display there. But it's been really, really pared back. Because they only have the one range of yarn, only Knitting for Olive is the only brand they have there, they've got the luxury of being able to display it in a really aesthetic way. So I'm sure you've seen it online many times. There's a great big wall on the right-hand side, and on that wall are all these pegs sticking out of the wall, and they've got two balls of every single colour in every single range of yarns they've got, of which there are only about 4 or 5, maybe 6 yarns. And they've got every colour plonked on the little peg, 2 balls of each. It looks beautiful. It looks like a, you know, like a wall of little lollipops. It's very, very cute. I wanted to buy a sweater quantity or a garment quantity of a yarn combination that I thought was very unusual, that I saw Sari Nordland use on her channel that she shares with Kuruvakika. I can't even remember what project it was that she was making, and I will go back and find out. But I do think that this yarn combination, whilst a little bit unusual, is going to make a fantastic garment for the Australian climate. And so I bought a sweater quantity of Knitting for Olive Pure Silk and Knitting for Olive Silk Mohair that I'm going to hold together to make something. I'm not sure, but I have enough for any kind of project. And I bought them in this dusty artichoke, a colour that I've never really liked that much when I've looked at it online, but which I couldn't resist when I saw it in person. So I bought that from Knitting for Olive. I was also going to buy a sweater quantity of their merino and silk mohair in another colour. But again, samples in stores. On the second level of Knitting for Olive, there's this great big beautiful timber table in the centre of the store. And on it and under it are piled up with all the Knitting for Olive samples. And they are the samples that are actually from their pattern catalogue, the original ones. You know, I was laughing earlier. It was like, you know, seeing celebrities when you went, oh, that's the actual Knitting for Olive Barbro blouse that you see on the pattern page. Well, this is the colour that the actual Knitting for Olive Barbro blouse that's on the pattern page was made from. And I tried that sample on. I didn't get a picture of it, unfortunately. I wish I had have. And that colour, if I don't say so myself, even though it's like a dingy brown, looked really good on me in the store. Maybe I was in the right mood. I don't know. And maybe the lighting was good. I don't know. But this is their plum clay. And I ended up buying, and it's only the merino. That sample is actually only made in merino in a single strand. It isn't held with any carry-along yarn, which is good for your budget, isn't it? And so I bought a sweater's quantity of Knitting for Olive merino in plum clay to make a Barbro blouse. That's actually quite high on my list of yarns that I'm going to cast on soon. Although that dusty artichoke is also very, very beautiful. And so that was the end of the big day in Frederiksberg. No, I lie. After Knitting for Olive, we then went to another yarn store in Frederiksberg called Brunstrick. I would say the vibe in Brunstrick is actually a little bit more upmarket. It's in quite a built-up area. There's plenty of restaurants around there. It's on a busy road. I think it's near a fairly big hotel or some sort of entertainment space. I think it's a hotel. And being on the main road of a shopping area, it's one of those shops that's got a really, really tall glass front window, which means that the light in that shop's actually quite good if you go and stand near the window, even though everything else in the shop did seem quite dark. I think the walls are dark and the floor's dark. It's got a concrete floor, it's got a little couch, and the yarns are stacked floor to ceiling, and because it's sort of a really tall ceiling, they've got those little library ladders to get to the yarns at the upper levels. Oh, another thing I'll mention is whenever I bought any sweater quantity of yarn, the shop assistants went out of their way to ensure that every single ball was coming from the same dye lot. The service level in the shops in Denmark was really phenomenal. They were all very, very knowledgeable and very friendly, but particularly they all went out of their way to ensure that every sweater quantity that you bought, that it all came from the same dye lot. I'm not sure that would happen in Australia. It was actually really, really fantastic service. I did not buy anything in Brunstrick, so I'll just let you enjoy yourself with the footage that I took there. There was an entire wall of the silk mohair different ones that you could compare. I really appreciated that. They had a table of cashmere, which again, you could compare the different cashmere brands. I can't really remember very well exactly what other brands that they had on display there. I'm assuming they had Isager, they had Cardiff, they had Sandnesgarn, and it was a very beautiful store. As a matter of fact, I do regret at that point I was actually getting a little bit of kind of yarn fume fatigue, believe it or not, and I didn't really have that good a look at what was in that store. And in fact, next time I go back to Copenhagen, which I hope will happen again in my lifetime, I'm going to start my next yarn crawl at Brunstrick, so I can have a proper look of what they've got there. After that, we had lunch. And after lunch, we went to another yarn store very close by that had an entirely different vibe, but one which actually stole my heart. And that yarn store was called Saamwerk. Saamwerk is a yarn store that was founded by 3 therapists, 3 psychologists, I believe. And it is such a beautiful, welcoming space that I'm actually sorry that I didn't spend more time looking at the yarn in that store. And in fact, I didn't buy anything. And that's because I met the beautiful viewer Jill in that shop. And she works there. And what I chose to do, instead of actually spending too much time looking at what was in the store, I actually chose to just enjoy my time with Jill. And I'm not sorry that I did that, because I really enjoyed talking to Jill and getting to know her a little bit in the time that I was in the Saamwerk yarn store. Jill, coincidentally and randomly, has been to Wollongong. Now, Jill's an American and she lives in Denmark, and she's only been there for a few years, and she found herself at a loose end, and knitting was her hobby. So she started to hang around the Saamwerk shop, and she hung around there for so long, they said, well, you may as well work here, and gave her a job or something like that. But yeah, she works at Saamwerk. So she'd arranged for me to meet her at the store, and we had a really lovely time there. We had a cup of tea and a really good catch up. But yeah, like I was saying, she's been to Wollongong, which is so funny because Jill is a self-professed world's biggest in-excess fan. And she came to Sydney a few years ago, I'm assuming, and she was sort of on a bit of an in-excess pilgrimage. And one of the in-excess videos back in the 80s was made in a, you know, like not very aesthetic suburb of Wollongong called Port Kembla. Anyway, turns out she's going on a day trip. She got on the train, she came down to Wollongong for the day, and I'm assuming went to this street in Port Kembla where one of the videos on the Kick album or something was filmed. I thought that was an absolute hoot. Also because my friend Donna, who you've met on this channel several times, she was a die-hard in-excess fan when she was younger, and I mean very much younger. And she used to like hang around the studio and, you know, talk to them and meet them. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Donna, correct me in the comments, that Michael Hutchins might have known Donna by name when she was a young teenage girl, getting up to no good, hanging around the recording studios in Sydney. I don't know, but I think that's true. Good story, even if it's not true. There's a little puppy in the park who's going mental with no owner. Is it mine? No, mine's here. Yeah, Donna, let me know if I've got the facts of that story right, but I'm pretty sure I do. And that reminded me, actually, that once in the 90s, I got off the tube at Sloane Square and was walking down Sloane Street, I don't know, probably going to Harvey Nicks or something, and I saw Paula Yates walking down, actually it was Kings Road, Chelsea, anyway. I saw Paula Yates walking down the road pushing a pram with Tiger Lily as a baby in the pram, and the other little toddler girls walking along next to her, and all four of them had fairy wings on. And to be honest, they looked calm and happy, sadly. Anyway, moving on from that lame claim to fame. So, Saamwerk, the store, founded by 3 therapists, and founded during COVID, when what they were saying that when the world shut down, they found that knitting was something that really helped centre them and helped ground them and helped keep them, you know, sane. So their aim was to create a space where you could go as a maker and you could just sort of be. They wanted it to be a welcoming and open space that was like non-performative, where you could just go and sit in the quiet if you wanted to, or just buy some yarn and stay for a short time or stay for a long time. And I think that they've really nailed that. The atmosphere in that store was actually really remarkable, since I was sitting there just chatting to Jill the whole time. But I felt that that store had a really, you know, wonderful calm, as well as an amazing array of yarns. And in retrospect, I wish I had looked at the yarn a little bit more. I know that Erica did definitely look at the yarn more than I did, because I was too busy yapping to Jill, which was also a great pleasure. But I would really think that Saamwerk was really up there with one of the most beautiful spaces that I've ever encountered, certainly in terms of a yarn store. Very unusual store. One of the yarn stories that really, really stood out to me from Saamwerk is I think it's called Snelden yarn. It's a Faroese yarn, and it is milled in the last mill left in the Faroe Islands, and it's made from a combination of the Faroe Island wool and the Shetland wool. I went onto their website and had a bit of a look at their yarns, and what they're talking about is that it's you know, it's rare and it's authentic and it's really hard to get. And they were talking about, you know, the availability of it is the luxury of it. It's not the product that's particularly luxurious, it's the fact that it is so elusive and it is so difficult to get. So they were saying, you know, jump on it when you can, when it is in stock. It's actually a theme of some of the Danish yarns and some of the more traditional yarns that we were looking at the whole time on the trip, is that a lot of these traditional spinneries are actually experiencing a very, very high volume of orders, which I think is absolutely fantastic, don't you? But this particular brand, this Snelden yarn, they're talking about it, it's being designed for projects that are going to last and that are going to be passed down. And I think one of the therapists that actually founded the Saamwerk store is from the Faroe Islands herself. So that was just a brilliant story. Like it was one of those other days that, when your heart really sings, when you stumble across something that's just so special. This was amazing. This place was great. They also had yarns from Navia, Filcolana, Rowan, Cardiff, Permin, redesigned bags, blah, blah, blah. Another place that I'm definitely, when I go back to Copenhagen, which I hope to do one day, I'm going to hang out more in Saamwerk. That place was, really remarkable. Loved it. And also loved meeting Jill, the world's biggest InXS fan. And at this point, we'd had a big day. So we headed home and, put our feet up and relaxed. But we weren't quite done with yarn shopping. And so we went to the Gepard flagship store in Lingby, which is in the outskirts of central Copenhagen. It's one of the suburbs. So we went to the Ulstedet store in Lingby, which I'm pretty sure only had Gepard yarn. If it did have other brands, then they were very, very low volume compared to the overwhelming majority of yarn in the shop. That's all the Gepard yarn. Gepard are like a heritage and sort of legacy yarn brand in Denmark. They don't chop and change their yarn varieties, and they don't chop and change their yarn colours. It's a big deal if Gepard actually do decide to carry a new yarn quality, if you like, a new yarn line. And it's also a big deal if Gepard decide to discontinue a colour or start a new colour. And I found that really interesting too, given that, Sandusky in particular do a lot of discontinuing, reinstating, changing their yarn colours quite a lot, whereas Gepard deliberately do not do that. So for that reason, the Gepard yarn palette colour-wise is a little bit more limited, but that's because they really focus on the consistency and the longevity of each of their colours. I found that really, really interesting. And once again, their samples that they had on display really got me. The Gepard samples, the Isager samples, and the Ito samples that were at the H&H trade show, some of them actually affected me long term. They were so outstandingly beautiful. But there was one particular project that was on display in the Gepard store that was for a jacket. And it's kind of a unisex jacket. It can be worn by either gender. It's a big, chunky, but very, very lightweight, sort of Aztec print kind of ethnic style zip-up jacket. Could be buttoned up, but that kind of, like a lumber jacket sort of thing, but it's done in the Gepard teddy deer, the boucle. Put a picture online. Anyway, I bought a kit to make, not a kit, I bought the yarn to make this project because I'm going to make this project for my husband for his significant birthday this year. I bought about 10,000 balls of teddy deer in this colour number 104, which is not their white, but it's their off-white. It's a cream. I don't know if it's cool leaning or warm leaning. I'm not very good at that. It's just a cream. I think it's like a milky oatmeal. I always say oatmeal. And then I also bought, how many did I say that was? 1 million balls of that. Then I bought 500,000 balls of the black in the teddy deer. This is the boucle. It's quite a common yarn to see on Ravelry and to see on the YouTube channels, but it's not a common yarn to see in stores in Australia. It's so soft and it's 100% wool. No, I lie. It's 60% merino and 40% alpaca. So it's got a real lofty softness to it, and it's a very, very, very bubbly boucle, but it doesn't have hardly any weight. So that's going to make a really, really lofty and warm jacket for my husband without being too heavy. So I bought these two colours for the Aztec kind of motifs, and then I bought this sort of warm nut brown hair colour to do the bands. It's a direct copy of one of the projects on Ravelry that really caught my eye, and possibly is the same one that they had actually in the shop. Not sure. So how many did I buy? I bought 1 million of the cream, 500,000 of the black, and 250,000 of the brown. This is another coincidence because Ali from Fiberbound last week released a video where she showed her Oh Wow Amsterdam project bag. Now, I had never heard of Oh Wow Amsterdam, except that now I know that their yarn trader in South Australia had them in stock. I don't know if they're still in stock there. Now, I saw these project bags on display in quite a few yarn stores in Denmark, and I was really drawn to them. I'd never seen this brand before, and they are so funky and so cool. These project bags really kind of lean towards like a chaotic sort of airbrushed graffiti kind of slapdash, but at the same time cool and well made kind of aesthetic. I bought this project bag. It looks like it's screen printed or somehow painted on the canvas in, you know, these really kind of chaotic fluoro colours, and all the stitching is done in fluoro yellow thread, and the label has been, you know, hectically sewn on using a machine thread in this fluoro orange. Anyway, I bought this project bag, and I also bought this little mini one, similar kind of thing, but just smaller. It's got like a check on it, and again, you know, the label hectically stitched on using this fluoro thread. I just thought these were really cool. I'd never seen anything like them, and then I come home and find that I could have got one in Australia all along. 2 project bags from the Gepard store in Lingby. And that is pretty much it for my yarn acquisitions that I bought. Just little tidbits from the trip as well. We went to Arhoj, the pottery maker who make these little hand glazed mugs, and I bought myself this little water cup. That was a lot of fun. There were some really, really gorgeous pieces there. We went to, as I mentioned, Lisa Light took us to the button store called Handler, which is in the centre of town, and I bought some buttons to go with my various projects. Another thing I noticed when I was walking around is, do you remember that supermodel from the 80s, Helena, or the 90s, Helena Christiansen? Well, I remember her. And she is a knitter, and she has a range of hand knitted, I don't know if they're knitted by her, but hand knitted kind of couture fashion pieces that were on display in the window of one of the shops just as I was walking around the corner, and I thought that was a lot of fun, just going to show you that you know, knitting in Denmark is really part of the fabric of their society. So Helena Christiansen would be, you know, my age now, a bit older maybe, and you know, this is how she's reinvented herself, and she's still in the fashion industry, and that was a lot of fun. She's making some very funky, cool pieces. And also, before I go, because I know you're going to ask, I didn't knit this cardigan. This cardigan is from Sezane, and I bought it about 6 years ago, and I do really love it. It's one of my favourite knitted pieces. It was actually the inspiration for me knitting my Priscilla cardigan, which I think is actually the most, in terms of Sezane's lace cardigans, that they have less of now than what they used to when I bought this in about 2000 or whenever. I think that the Marzena collar check Priscilla is actually the closest thing to this style of cardigan that you can get, and I knitted one of those a couple of years ago as well, and I love that too. That was a big one, wasn't it? Oh. I'd be interested to see if that little Fonty label flicked out and went down my top during the video, because I just found that between my boobs. That was everything I acquired on my trip. And I know it's a lot, and I know there's a cost of living crisis, but it felt to me like it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I do have plans for all of the yarns that I did purchase. And also, I am hoping, you know, over the next couple of years to make this content more of my primary earnings. And so, you know, I'm part of the reason for buying this yarn is to show it on the channel in the future in the form of whips and finished items. That's a bit of a lame excuse, isn't it? I don't want to tell you what to think, but can I just say it's not normal for me to go out and buy these kinds of quantities of yarn. But I've done it, so there you go. If you stuck with me for this long, thank you. And I'm going to reward you with an opportunity for a giveaway. I'm going to give away these two yarns. This is the Oatmeal Lana Grossa Alpaca sock, middleweight sock, and then this is a coordinating, I guess, Lana Grossa variegated sock. The colourway, I wonder if it's got a colourway. It does. So you can look at it online to see if you like it or not. So it's the colourway 16866225, and this is the colourway 2007. I think they go together quite well, and I'm going to give them away. All I'd like you to do is comment on this video with an idea of what you would make with these two yarns. It will be a game of chance. I will randomly choose a comment, but I would like you to actually answer the question at least if you're going to go into the draw. So leave a comment on the video telling me what you would make with these two yarns, and during the week I'll choose, and I'll keep it open I will keep the comments open until Sunday the 26th of April, and on Monday the 27th of April I'll draw a random winner who has actually answered the question of what they would make with these two yarns. So that's my gift to you for being such wonderful people and watching these videos. I will ship that anywhere in the world, so doesn't matter where you live. So I do that in gratitude for all you wonderful viewers and also for the channel having its 2nd birthday. I have made a big mess and I've completely run out of puff, so I'm going to round it up now. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment, tell me what you would make with that sock yarn to go in the draw to win it. And until I see you next time, be good. Bye.
But they're not gonna